All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the lab. As always, sitting with you is Lou Folenkamp, Alex Trotter, and Brandon Wierig. We have a special guest with us today here from Eastern Michigan University, Mr. Cameron Dietz.
Yes, sir. Glad to be on.
Good to have you, man. So Cameron, as always, we start off with the same question. What made you want to become a strength and conditioning coach?
Yeah, so I played baseball growing up, along with other things, and wasn't really good at anything but baseball. And I quickly realized that I was not going to be a professional baseball player. So pipe dream gone, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do that's as close to baseball, professional baseball, whatever the case is. For a long time, I thought like sports journalism, liked writing things and stuff, but ended up really falling in love with the weight room. So just started doing some internships, changed my major, everything like that. So here I am after many years still working in a weight room. So couldn't be very lucky to be able to do it. So
Nice, very nice. So what sports in particular do you get to work with every day?
so I oversee women's basketball, volleyball, and baseball right now.
Okay. Now, are you from Michigan originally?
No. So originally from Colorado, went to undergrad at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Played baseball. After that, interned at the University of Delaware. Came back, was a graduate assistant, and got my master's at Northern Colorado. And then took an internship at North Texas. Got hired at Utah Valley University, and then moved out to Michigan. So just kind of back and forth. So
Holy cow!
yeah,
You're a traveling man.
yeah, traveling man. Yep.
Holy cow! So, have you found any sports in particular that you absolutely love working with, or any that you've had like the most trouble with working?
I mean, it's easy for me to relate what we do in the weight room to baseball because I played. So that's the easiest. I wouldn't say most enjoyable because every team has like their own kind of quirks. Like I really loved working with golf and wrestling at Utah Valley. I had golfers there that are better athletes than I have here on the baseball team. So, it's always fun to get to work with different teams. Like another example would be tennis was mostly foreign students at Northern Colorado. So we had, guys on the team that were from England and from Spain and from France, and like they loved like heavy EDM techno music. So it was always just like you just banging in the weight room. And then, the wrestlers are, unbelievable athletes. So it's there's really pros and cons to everything. I will say, at times it can be hard when you're working with a team. It's not a particular sport. I've just found if you work for a really good coach, it's a lot better. If you work for a coach that, trusts you and lets you do your job. But it really doesn't have much to do with what sport they're playing, in my opinion. So.
Okay. So, how long have you been a strength conditioning coach then?
Let's see, full time for the last 4 years, graduate assistant for 2 years, and then like intern doing some personal training and bullshit for like a year before that. So 6-7 years.
Okay. So, throughout your experience, what have you found that's worked for you as like a developing strength and conditioning coach?
In terms of like programming and stuff?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I think from year to year, I always try and like break down what we did or what I did and like what like I could try and do better. I would say if you looked at my program now compared to even 2-3 years ago, I spend a lot less time in the weight room and a lot more time on the field in terms of speed development, plyometrics, trying to marry the plyometrics with the speed work, and then really just trying to make sure that like the goal is to get them better at their sport. So I want to try and get them in that element as much as possible. Does that mean like we do our speed and agility work with a basketball? No, but I make sure that like they have to change directions. They have to react to each other. Like my favorite forms of conditioning are games. So can we play ultimate frisbee? Can we play capture the flag? Can we play sharks and minnows? Like those things that are like just having like a closed chain 5-10-5 drill and getting better at that doesn't mean that you've improved your ability to react and change directions. It's not easy to measure either, and that's okay as long as we're doing it and doing it in a way that they enjoy as well. So
You're gonna like that one.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So, what would you say you've gotten away from, like in your early years as a strength conditioning coach, that you look at now and you're like, man, why did I ever do that?
So I always get the question of am I related to Cal Dietz? I'm not. But when I first got that question like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I didn't know who Cal was. And so one of the first like true, real, 100% strength conditioning based books that I read was Triphasic Training. And so I ran it myself, did a whole like 16-week, every single Supermax eccentric, all of it, and fell in love with it because it's hard and my strength just went through the roof. And I'd been like training for a while. So it was just a completely super potent, super difficult stimulus. But if you can find a way to handle it, like you will get better. I still think there's a lot of value in like Supermax or even accentuated eccentric work, or whether it be overcoming isometrics or yielding isometrics. Like there's value in all of that stuff, but I think that it's too stressful on the body to run true triphasic while still having to do the sport. Like I just think it's almost impossible to go through classes, triphasic practice, and the social life, because like college kids go out like I did, like they're gonna stay up late, they're gonna do dumb shit. So it's just a matter of like I think it's too hard to run true triphasic. So I definitely modify it. We definitely have times where we do really difficult eccentric things, but I make sure that it's at the right time where our sport volume is very low or our sport intensity is very low. So that's probably the biggest change I've made.
Okay. So then I guess on more like the administrative side of things, as you kind of moved up the ranks, how have you been about, I guess, developing other coaches?
Yeah, so I currently run our internship program here with like I ran it at Utah Valley, and then here like it's just we have 3 different weight rooms, so essentially we have 3 different facilities and they're all very separated. So between Ryan Zaporsky and I, like we kind of like head that up because he's at one of the facilities and I'm at the other facility. And so for me, it's always been, I interned at schools, and I won't go into which internships were good and weren't, but I didn't walk away from all of my internships actually learning anything. You sign up to get experience, right? And write it on your resume. And if what you write on your resume is the fact that they had Tendo units there, like that's cool, but like did you actually do anything with them? Did you just set them up? Did you just change weights on a bar? Did you just carry plates out to the field and put them on prowlers every day? So for me, I want our internship, or when we have people that actually come in and want to be a strength coach or think they want to be a strength coach, I keep it really honest with them, and then I try and teach them everything that we do, and I try and get them involved as quickly as I can. You do have some people that step in and they think, oh, well, I watched this Instagram video and therefore I know that rear foot elevated split squat should be like this because I'm targeting the glutes more. And it's like, okay, I'm not really concerned with how you're twisting your body in order to get your glute medius to feel like more strain. But, it's like, I want them to be involved. I want them to coach. I want to teach them what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I want them to move on. And I'm lucky to say that I've had some interns that have done that and are, currently working in the field. And that's the best feeling that you can have is being able to build a tree of, coaches. So
that's pretty awesome, Cam. That's pretty sweet.
That's all.
They're not just labor to you. You're actually trying to like build up the profession.
The labor is nice. Like the labor is like, I mean, it is. So like even today, so it's up in Michigan, like there's fires in Canada and whatever. And so the condition like we haven't been able to condition outside. And so I've been trying to get a little bit creative today. So today, last Friday, we were doing like repeat 200 tempos, with women's basketball. And so I was like, okay, I want them to do something that's some challenging, but we got to be inside. And I don't want to take them over to the bubble because it's, it's a decent walk where I know that we're just going to waste time. So I have an intern, and luckily she's a pretty good athlete. She's on the volleyball team, so she's a decent athlete. And I came in and I was like, Liv, like, I want you to run upstairs and I want you to run around the concourse and time it. I don't need you to sprint it. I don't need you to jog it. Somewhere in between, just run one lap around the concourse and time it. And then from there, I'll be able to adjust. And I don't know what the distance was. I would guess 300 meters. But we did repeat 300-meter runs around the concourse this morning. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's great to have somebody that can just run up while you're like trying to, set up the weight room. She can go up and run a lap really quick. Like, interns are invaluable in terms of like their ability to help you do some stuff. Like, can you run to the printer? Sure. Like, that's awesome. But I need you to do more than that. I need you to get a job after this. Like, I want to help them get and be a graduate assistant when they're done, because I didn't feel that way from my first mentors. So I want to make sure that when they walk away from this, they know that they're at least going to get everything that I could, like in terms of helping them further their career.
Makes sense. What I'll do here, Cam, is I'm going to open the floor up to these two so you can feel the
Cool.
from them.
Yeah.
Did you ever work in like any private sector?
I did private sector work before I did my first internship at Delaware. So I essentially graduated undergrad, and I actually had lined up my last semester of undergrad. I had lined up an internship at the Air Force Academy, and let's say the semester started January 9th, right? And we didn't really set like when I was supposed to start or anything like that. So I took it for granted, and I went up there and went in on like January 11th. And I show up, and I won't get into which coach it was or anything like that, because I deserved what I got. But I walked in and he was like, "You don't work here, man." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, you don't work here. Like, I've had another intern that's been here for a week already. Like, if you didn't want to be here on Monday, if you didn't want to be here last week, like, I don't need you. And so I'm sitting there like, oh shit, like, I got to graduate. Like, F the job. Like, I need to graduate. This is my 9 credits. Like, what am I going to do? So I'm super embarrassed. I go to my internship coordinator, and she, takes pity on me, and I don't even know why she did it, but I appreciate her. And she lined me up with like a brand new private facility. So I worked in that private facility as an intern, got hired as a coach afterwards. And it's just one of those things where like I took that learning lesson of like taking, like, again, internship, unpaid. I was upset that I was going to have to work for free. Like, I just had a really shitty attitude about it. And so I ended up in the private sector, and it was okay, but it's just super salesy. And it's like, it's not about the job. It's about like how much you can sell. So I did that. I did some personal training at 24 Hour Fitness. I went from there and kind of like did like I opened my own facility for a second. And so, you learn a lot of stuff and how much money you can burn through at 23 years old really quick. So I did all that stuff, and it was really just not like, I wasn't working with the level of athletes that I wanted to. I just thought the grass is greener. And so I was pro ball. How do I get there? And eventually it was, you need experience at an institution. And so, the advice that I got from Coach Alvarez, who at the time was the director with the Pittsburgh Pirates, he told me, go find the first internship you can find on Football Scoop and take it. It doesn't matter what sports you get to work with. Obviously, Football Scoop, you'll work football, but take it. You need experience in a weight room working with a team. And then from there, just kind of fell in love with college and just kept pursuing that as much as I could.
Well, that answers all those questions I was going to bring up for that. But going back from like Colorado to Michigan, does you have the elevation? Does that play a big factor? Do you take that into consideration in your training?
Yeah, I take it into consideration, because even Utah, the elevation was a little bit higher. So like, I think the biggest thing that you'll have to modify, or you should modify, is if you're doing consistent, like if you're consistent with timed things. Like if I do a tempo run and I want them to run 100 yards in 15 seconds or whatever the case is, you have to adjust those times at altitude. Like you will have skill guys that are at, if you're working football, you'll have skill guys that can do it and they can suck it up. But it's just a matter of adjusting those times to be responsible and to make sure that it's attainable. You want, with conditioning, like the goal is to get them physically and like build their aerobic capacity. It's not always this mental toughness stuff. So just taking the cut and paste of, like let's say a guy gets hired at CU, right? Like Dion hires director of football. I would hope that if he hired him from, let's say, Ole Miss, or let's say a school in the SEC where the altitude is 0, I would hope that they would adjust that stuff, because it plays a big role in aerobic work, especially.
Do you ever feel like there's a difference between like maybe East Coast athletes versus more that Central Mountain style athletes?
Like where they're actually, like where they're from?
Yeah.
I would say the biggest differences that I've seen with athletes and where they're from is not so much centrally located. Maybe that's because I was like, from Colorado. I don't feel like guys and girls from Colorado specifically, or like Wyoming, that area, that wasn't a big difference to me. I think the biggest differences that I see are like South. I think they have a different work ethic in terms of like, a lot of times this is going to school and getting a scholarship and having school paid for. It's like their way out sometimes of a bad situation. And I think at times they work really, really hard because of that. And that can be beneficial as a strength coach. You've got somebody that is like willing to run through a brick wall because they know in the back of their mind that they like grew up with less, right? And so they have just a better work ethic, because from age 12, they knew like, I need a scholarship if I'm going to get out of the situation that I'm in. That's kind of the geographic piece, right? And then California, I feel like if you're talking about female sports, typically they're used to things being a little bit easier, in my opinion. That's specifically female athletes, in my opinion. I think just on the West Coast, like I think they have their trainer, like there's more money typically. And I have my trainer, we do this. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not worried about what you did with your trainer. Like, they didn't teach you how to do these exercises, and that's what we like to do. So, I think there's a lot more with the socioeconomic piece. And then it's kind of interesting that you bring it up, because I really haven't thought about it geographically. Like, sure, the accent may be different, but it's really socioeconomic positions of, like I always tell people, I love junior college transfers. JUCO kids come into Division I schools and they look around, and even if your weight room, like you're looking at your weight room, it's like, like we have some nice stuff. Like we have racks, or like, look, we have perch, or like, yeah, we have some nice stuff. But kids from JUCOs come in, they go, I have a strength coach. Like my head coach isn't writing my program, and I'm not doing 10 by 10 everything, because that's just, it sounded good today. Like JUCO kids are my favorite athletes to work with typically, because they take nothing for granted. They've seen what schools with nothing have. So when they're here, it's, God, you guys have everything. Whereas like transfers, like at our mid-major and the MAC conference, like we get kids that drop down. We have Power 5 drop downs. They typically, and this is all just in my opinion, they typically kind of look at it as like, well, I'll make the best of it because I'm here, or like, like it's a demotion. But JUCO kids are like just awesome, typically awesome. There's shitheads everywhere, but like typically JUCO kids are really, really good, really good.
Yeah. That's a perfect transition. Because I essentially got, at least I would say, like my break in the private sector was through JUCO kids. I had like 4 JUCO kids that were like right down the street for a baseball team here locally, and yeah, three of them now are going to be playing at Division I schools and stuff like that. And yeah, they came in and just worked their ass off every day. So like, I fully stand behind your statement there.
No, especially baseball. And yeah, like, I have all my like athletes know that I played baseball. So there's always this, like, you guys, like, you love baseball more than, it's like, I don't, I enjoy working with all you guys for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, baseball JUCO is it's much more common. Like you get the last chance like that show is awesome because it shows the insides of JUCO football and basketball, but it also kind of gives you an idea of why kids go there. And it's not for the same reason as baseball. To me, the reason that you go to a junior college in baseball is you're either really good and you want to go to an elite junior college and play for 2 years at a very, very high level and get drafted from a junior college. The grades are always sometimes an issue. Like kids go to junior college because they can't get into a Division I school. But a lot of times, like the development that happens in a junior college, because they have unlimited hours. If they want to practice from 6 to 10 and then give them 2 hours for their class schedule, and then have them back for 6 more hours at night, they don't have any limitations. Like we have our compliance limitations of 8 hours or 20 hours. JUCO, they can do whatever they want. So some of these guys are hitting, they're taking 1,000 cuts a day and they end up making really big strides. But the physical piece is always can be the piece that they don't have because they don't have the resources. Right. They don't have the strength coach. Typically they don't have the strength coach. They don't have the facility to even train at. They don't have the guidance. So,
yeah, that's solid. The other one was, if you could go back and knowing what you know now, and you're coming out of high school or something along those lines, what would have you changed about like your programming or how you went about your training to potentially get you to the next level as well?
Oof, yeah, I would change a lot. So I really didn't start lifting at all until my senior year of high school. So depending on how far I could go back, I would have started like touching weights way before that. And then even when I did start lifting, I didn't really care about speed because I wasn't fast and I knew I wasn't fast. And it was like, well, I'm not fast and I'm not going to get much faster, and speed doesn't play that big a role in my game. So I'm not going to focus on it. Our baseball guys, if there's one thing that they knew that we were going to do, and if there was one thing that we did this year, it was we were going to get faster. And I told them, pitchers, position players, I don't care if Tony Holler, I think, is the one that's kind of been saying that speed, top speed, max velocity raises is the tide that raises all ships, right? That's like the saying that I've heard a lot. And in terms of for us, the way that I always justify it is if you get faster, you're producing more force and at a higher rate and more efficiently on each leg throughout the course of a limited distance, a very fast thing. There's nothing in the weight room that I'm going to be able to give them that's ever going to match the speed that they're going to run at. And even with that, the things that I like to do with it, like I find more benefit out of grabbing a med ball and throwing it in the air at a 6'4" pound light med ball, throwing it, 30 feet in the air, and the intent and the stimulus that provides sometimes, especially if they're not very good at the clean derivatives. I'll take the overhead throws over bad power cleans. So that's where it's like, if I could go back and redo it, I would definitely make sure that I was doing more speed work because I think that it's had a huge impact on our season, especially this last year.
Yeah. Now, what's some of if you could have like your top 1 or 2 like KPIs that you use for like each sport, what would those be?
Well, I'm lucky to have force plates, and I've been trying to use them more because they're expensive, and so I want to make sure that they know as an administration that they're not collecting dust. So, so for me, like if we're talking baseball, my biggest KPIs, if I had to do 3, it'd be grip strength, it'd be top speed, and it would be probably either jump height or like relative peak power. I like relative peak power because like I'm a bigger guy, and so my vert may not be the same height, but like I produce a good amount of force, right? Yeah. So I would say those 3 probably. But I mean, again, if you have force plates and you have these like toys, like you can look at ungodly amounts of things. So really, if I had to break it down as those 3, I mean, even women's basketball now, we're starting to time top speeds because I think it's important, even though they don't reach their time sprints we time from the 15 to the 20. So it's essentially a 15-yard fly. But it's a 20-yard max effort sprint. I just timed the last 5. And that's just because Les Spellman in his courses have said that if you don't have the wearables to tell you what the speed is, the 5 is a more accurate tell of what that top speed is versus a 10. So anyways, so women's basketball is doing 20s, and then baseball I always do 30s. And if I were to stretch it out to 40, we'd have higher speeds, but I want them to stay kind of in that general, base from base to base length.
Right. Yeah.
So
more applicable.
Yeah. But even then, if I'm thinking about it, I lead off the bag, I'm probably 3 yards away, and then I start my slide, and we play on our infield's turf. So I start my slide probably 3 yards early also. So I really should measure from the 20 to the 25.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's just whatever. We're doing 30, and I'll probably always do 30. So.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. That's all I got.
Any other questions? All right. Well, Cam, thanks for joining us today, man. Enjoyed the conversation with you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it.
We will see everyone in the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you.